Dear guests, dear friends, I'm very honored to chair this panel debate during Warsaw Sector 3.0 this year. This is, as you know, the great, unbelievable conference, and I think that our debate also will be very, very fruitful. My name is Michał Boni. I'm the member of the European Parliament from Poland, involved in many digital issues from the data protection solutions, cybersecurity, to the 5G development and robotics. We have invited to this panel inspiring and influential people involved from many years in the digital challenges. Let me introduce them at the very beginning of our meeting. Eva Walterova, All Digital Telecentre Europe, project manager of interactive iLink, stakeholder platform on ICT for learning and inclusion for youth, employability and entrepreneurship. Kineret Karin, co-founder at TechForGood from Singapore, experienced entrepreneur at the e-commerce area, and I think that she will share with us her experiences and we will be ready to follow those fantastic experiences. Peter Gloor, the research scientist at the Center for Collective Intelligence at Massachusetts Institute of Technologies, Sloan School of Management, and in the Galaxy Advisors as a Chief Creative Officer. He puts his academic insights to practical use. He is the lecturer and professor at many universities. Among his 9 books, I want to mention 2, Using Collaborative Innovation Networks to Build a Better Business, and Sociometrics and Human Relationships, published this year. Professor Junseok Hwang from Seoul National University, the researcher. As a professor, he trained more than 100 government officials from about 40 countries as leaders of global ICT policy making. He established the Institute of Smart Technology, Information, Contents and Knowledge with the mission to explore and understand the social ecosystem composed of newly emerged knowledge, economics and culture due to new technology development. Last but not least, Dżoga, one of the brilliant digital leaders in Poland. He led the social project Internet at Schools. Now he's working in Intel as a director of corporate and government affairs for Europe, involved in building the startups ecosystem. So, as you can see, we have a fantastic, great team for our debate. The key topics of these debates are, firstly, the impact of the Internet on our life in various dimensions: economic, social, private. How the Internet is changing our industries. We are talking about Internet of Things, self-driving opportunities, robotics. How the Internet is changing services. We are talking about e-health and new educational challenges and possibilities. And also the Internet is changing our behaviors when we are the members, the participants of social networks. How we can describe all those new opportunities. Secondly, we are fascinated how the Internet is changing the world. But after many years of this fascination, now we need to understand all aspects of digital phenomena in positive terms and in negative terms. Can we assess what is the bright side, what is the dark side of the internet, and how to tackle all those new opportunities and challenges, avoiding the growing threats? Thirdly, how the internet will change the future labor market and the characteristic of the workforce. Are we ready to cooperate with artificial intelligence, with robots? Do we understand the concept of the learning machines? What are the prospects of our, as humans, position in the labor market? What kind of skills are needed to be adjusted to the new challenges? The coding will be sufficient or not? How to teach people in the digital era to give them the skill to learn all the life? Fourth question for our consideration: do we really understand the cybersecurity issues? What and how does it mean the privacy protection on the other side in the digital world? Who should be responsible for the cybersecurity solutions? The network of the states, as for example, the European Union, companies, all authorities at the regional and local level, we as users? How important is the trust between all digital partners in business, in services, between the citizens and the governments? How can we be protected vis-à-vis the global cybersecurity threats? Fifthly, how the internet can support the development of the modern democracy by creating the models with digital tools for better communication between the administration and citizens due to the new forms of administrative and public services, now e-services, by using the tools for making the government much more open, which means the access to the governmental data, also for commercial purposes, and what can create the open data society and will develop the instruments for participatory democracy. And the last problem, how crucial is to involve to the digital revolution all stakeholders, all of you, especially the civic society organizations, by considering their specific opportunities to build the digital citizenship. Is it possible to create the digital citizenship? How to understand this concept? What are the objectives? What are the obstacles at that area? This is for general consideration during this panel, but also after our meeting, because in this year, in Sector 3.0, we are talking about shaping our future. Now let's start the debate. I will start with Iva. How do you think, what are the key problems we need to solve to make people much more adjusted to the digital game changer? How can we support the young generation to take some skills, and also how we can solve the problem of intergenerational digital gap, how we can learn elderly people, what we can make when we want to open the internet. Open internet is open by nature, but what we need to do to open the internet for everybody. Please.
So thank you for the question, and if I may, I will speak from the point of view of the organizations we work with, although perhaps not detailed examples, but in general, on the local level, on the state level, we don't really know exactly how the job market and life in general will look in the future with technologies. But everybody will have to use and interact with technologies in every job. For example, if one is a nurse, today they have interpersonal and medical skills. In very near future, while taking, let's say, care of elderly people, they will also have to be able to interpret data, read data, know a bit about IoT, ubiquitous technologies. So clearly, all kids today, without exceptions, you were talking about digital gap, so without any exceptions in terms of social background, which is often the case, today need to learn and eventually be very comfortable using technologies, both at work but also in life. They need to interact with government, they need to be netizens, as is said today. And here we need the teachers, we need also non-formal educators, and we need education administrators to really be knowledgeable and comfortable with technologies. This aspect must be really strongly supported on the European level, state level, every level basically. And let us not forget also another excluded group, basically the elderly people. Because they might not be really working on the job market, they might not be on the job market in the upcoming years, but they will still need to be citizens of a government that is online. They will need to be using e-services, and they will need to also perhaps interact with that nurse remotely that I mentioned earlier. So there are a number of programs for these people. Throughout our membership, there are so many programs and activities, but they are largely in the non-formal sector, and the people need to be told about them. Everybody needs to have access to that, and everybody needs to learn from each other to improve. Secondly, there is the issue of basically the Commission says that by 2020 or beyond 2020 there will be almost 1 million vacant ICT jobs. And we need our educators to encourage young people to go for these jobs, to think that technology is cool. There is, among our membership, there is so many organizations that, like coding clubs and all these different kind of hobby groups. But the issue is that a lot of people, let's say, for example, women or girls, are not really encouraged to go for it because they're kind of nerds clubs. They're not cool, right? So what we need to do is, again, encourage experience exchange, and also between the formal and the non-formal education sector. And lastly, what I see as very necessary is that we need to have standards for the digital skills. We need to be able to measure them. For example, when I go to my future employer, potential employer, I am able to tell them how much English I speak, but because there are certain standards. But we don't really have that widely spread for digital skills. The European Commission has the Digital Competencies Framework, and this would work, but it needs to be adopted widely, and people need to be able to use it. And of course, as everything develops so fast during this digital transformation, people also needs to be continuously updated. And so, as I was talking, I mean, the recurring topic here is encouraging dialogue and learning from each other. And here I will add a little bit about what I'm doing in terms of the iLink project, because what we are trying to, what our imperative is that basically people with different types of backgrounds need to get together, need to come up with solutions together, and need to continue dialogue, need to continue sharing, because that's the only way that innovative ideas really come up, and that people adopt solutions that they may not otherwise. And so we are basically working on this platform which is called iLink at All Digital, and it brings together academia, non-formal and formal education sector in terms of even from young kids, also policymakers, businesses and other stakeholders and users. And on the platform they can share their information, their best practices, they can learn, debate, network around the idea of digital skills for young people, as well as soft skills such as entrepreneurial or employability skills. And this is how we hope we can help the cause a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, it is excellent, but when I'm looking at Polish educational system, my problem is, okay, young people are ready, young people understand all issues related to the internet, and are digitally prepared to live. But when I'm looking at the teachers, yes, so there are many problems. So of course we need to remember about how to teach teachers and how to make them much more prepared to this digital revolution. Kineret, if I ask you about your experiences related to e-commerce in the European Union, it's very important. We are talking about avoiding geo-blocking. We are changing some directives and regulations and want to make e-commerce possible for based on the same rules possible for all 28 in the future 27 countries. But how do you see all problems related to e-commerce? What do you think about the trust between clients, consumers, and the business? How to create this trust? How to make the relations during all those processes of e-commerce much more secure and much more safe?
Okay, I'm here as the e-commerce expert. So I had a food delivery company in Singapore. I started it 8 years ago. E-commerce, food delivery in a way is e-commerce because you buy food. So a lot has changed in the last 8 years in the e-commerce platform. Today, I would say the world is a very large shopping mall. So if I live in Singapore, I can buy things from the US, I can buy things from Europe. It's not a big issue. I just go online, choose what I want and buy. I can decide, even in some places I can decide, okay, I like shoes. So I go to a certain website and I can decide, okay, I want this and this shoe, I want this color, I want this strap, I want this and this. So today, the e-commerce is accessible to everybody worldwide, and you can customize your own things that you want to buy on the e-commerce. It's like I said, it's very accessible, and it's also the internet, because we use the internet on a daily basis. I open I go to Google, and then after 5 minutes I get all these advertisements and all these e-commerce platforms that they tell me what I need to buy today, because yesterday I was searching for this and this. So it's very helpful that I don't need to look for things, the internet looks for me. And you asked about in terms of security and how we can trust who we're buying from. So I think it's a big issue. I don't like to put my credit card on the internet. It's very easy to access it. But today you have various things. So you can use your your fingerprint. Some even have a face recognition. So it's getting there. All the security behind paying and all the e-commerce, because I think all the companies understand that the security level needs to be very, very high. Hackers are everywhere, and it's very easy for them. So they need to find very good solutions. I'm not an expert on cybersecurity, but I know there are thousands of people out there that are being paid for, and there are very smart people that are trying to overcome what to do. So the next, I would say, hacking won't come in e-commerce.
Thank you very much. On the other hand, if you are talking about e-commerce, we need to consider the role of the special currency, Bitcoin. Is it useful? What do you think?
About what?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Oh, I know the Bitcoin is very high today. So when I saw it went very high, I said I should have gotten some Bitcoins. I think the whole idea of buying things with the Bitcoin is it's not something that a lot of people have or understand. It's not accessible to everybody. To buy a Bitcoin, it's not very easy today. So I don't think people at this point will use Bitcoins to buy things online. But who knows? Things that happened in the last year, we never thought that they would happen. So you never know. Maybe a year from now I'll be sitting here and I'll tell you, yeah, I'm doing all my all my shopping on Bitcoin.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that we need to discuss about Eurozone and the euro in Europe and make it much more stronger, and after that come back to the discussion on Bitcoin. Thank you very much. And Professor Junseok Hwang, what is your view on the new opportunities related to using digital tools, e-democracy, participatory democracy, changing the relations between governments, administration and citizens, give the citizens the possibility to look at some works done by the governments, which means transparency. The problem in the modern world is related to the trust between citizens and the governments. How do you think we can improve it?
Yeah, well, I think we've been already experiencing what e-government is and how to use, internet or technology to help our business process or participation in the society. Well, I'd like to touch on probably three main ways that how we should probably think about as a principle of the e-democracy, and which we say the ideal society we are looking for. And the first way I would say like a smart way. Well, smart way means something related to intelligence, something related to the way of thinking, and so but more distributed way of the. So smart way represent the Congress that we are holding. Would not be just by the elections, but very interactive interaction with the citizens. For example, if you see recent Korea impeachment happened through our candle ceremony or candle demonstration. That some record they made, there was no violation on during this the demonstration or whatever. We say that not only demonstration, we say the ceremony. And so we accomplished another level of democracy in very peaceful way, who never launched in that way. So I think people should find what is the smart way. Should I fight against the government to achieve what we have, or there are other ways no one can deny about the way we are doing? So the first thing is in a smart way that both politicians and the citizen need to think about. The second way I'd like to say is global way. Well, when we say about the democracy, we often think about the national boundary. But basics of the democracy is about the human rights. So fundamentally, we need to think about what is global standard that everyone can be respected in terms of their rights and the duties. So there are many different ethics or privacy and expectation about what the society should be. For example, Poland have been experiencing communism and socialism. Now, with the democracy and freedom, with the capitalism it is going through. I would say that was a great lesson and current maturity what the Polish society having is based on some of the past ways what we have also what Polish society has experienced. So, but there is a global understanding what the social roles of individual human beings are. So that is one, I would say, the second way of the global thinking, or global way. Finally, the third way I'd like to mention about the e-democracy or democracy is a human way. People, for example, in 2016, in Davos Forum, Charles Schwab, the chairman, tossed on the keywords called Industrial Revolution 4.0 or Fourth Industrial Revolution. So I think if I cite, he expected that we will be living in a society where we will find ourselves in new way. So truly the human identity or human expectation will be quite different. I would say democracy will be quite different from 10 years from now. The reason is basically we will be recreating our identity. For example, in all digital, we try to promote the using of the digital or the awareness of the importance of the digital in many sectors. But then what is the digital human beings? How can we describe ourselves into 7 principles or 7 digits? So we have to think of what the human being, I have certain philosophy, and in my book, Digitology, probably human can be described in 7 ways of the understanding: reason, spirit, holiness, sense, will, self-else, and integrity. So this is philosophical term, but probably throughout our study, and we have to identify our new generation or ourselves now. Probably we are still lacking of understanding ourselves. So that's why I believe probably our e-democracy will be further changing our society in the way of a human, with the new identity of the human way. So that's my 2 tokens on your questions.
Thank you very much. It sounds very optimistic that we are ready to recreate democracy and build our identities and cooperate with different people, because on the other hand, when we are looking at 2016 and 2017, there are many new challenges and problems related to building completely different and fighting between themselves political camps. We are in one group, and our enemies are in the second group. Yes, and very often we are not talking. Yes, we are banning people with different views on the world. So the work is before us, but I agree that this is the future, and we need also to consider how to raise the awareness on those issues, and how we can use e-tools for building democracy. We are in the Sector 3.0 conference, and what is important, additional question, how do you think, how we can involve NGOs, how we can involve civic society organizations to participate in this democracy vision?
Well, I think Sector 3.0 is a very frontier effort, I believe. The reason is, for example, the Sector 1 is government in many senses, but Sector 2 is business. So Sector 1 actually gives involvement of personal to the society. Sector 2 was actually the humans' innovation to the resources, which is business. And the Sector 3 is about the integrity, which is very high value of a human identity. And so I think the NGOs' mindset of innovating what the value we are chasing for. So I believe the creativity idea will be led by these value pursuing group. So eventually, I think these NGO spirit will be spilled over to business and government, because government is responsible for the interest of the nationality and things like that. So there are certain limitations. But for example, in NGO or sectors, purely you can search for the values. So that's what I believe. There's a very strong advantage, taking the innovation through non-NGOs point of view. So when I attended 2 years ago in Sector 3.0, and I found that this is truly pioneering, effort. I have students, from more than 40 countries and all around. They are the leaders, okay, from the government and doing IT, and but not many of the government yet are really looking the importance of like this third sector. But I think what I witnessed in Poland was actually there's great awareness of the importance of the NGO, and also it's been developing. So I see some very positive and optimistic view on those efforts.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And now we will go to the next speaker, Professor Gloor. How do you assess our readiness as humans to start the cooperation of the labor market with artificial intelligence? What we need to understand, what kind of principles are needed? Should we be afraid of our job places, of our work or not? So what do you think, how we can organize the framework for future cooperation between humans and artificial intelligence?
So thank you very much for that question. I would like to address it through the angles of my three predecessors, because I think those are the things that either we can be extremely afraid of or extremely hopeful. And as you know from this morning, I'm of course an optimistic person and very optimistic that we will overcome those obstacles. But just starting with the labor market, there is a book by a colleague of mine, Erik Brynjolfsson, The Second Machine Age, that will predict that we will have a huge underclass of unemployed people that have just not what you are trying to teach our future workforce, namely digital skills, and they will be jobless and they will be hooligans and they will lead a really miserable life. Now, personally, I'm much more optimistic because what artificial intelligence cannot do, the human touch. And what makes us happy? Being with others. And being with a computer, I don't think that will ever make us happy. So that means things like healthcare, taking care of others in nursing home and so on. Those sort of skills, in principle in Japan you can have robots that will be in nursing homes and taking care of your elderly, but I think that's a very sad society if that's what you have to use the robots for. So in that regard, I think artificial intelligence can just help us. Of course, there is this big scenario that computers will, as Stephen Hawking or Elon Musk have been saying, they will rule us. They might decide that humans are not necessary, because when the time of the singularity comes, which is basically the time when computers will teach computers to be smarter because we are too dumb for them, it's a scenario. It's a scenario that we have to be aware of, but honestly, I don't believe that the scenario will play out like that, because we are collectively intelligent. That means if we combine our forces, then our brains, then we will still be smarter as computers. And then there is those 3 laws of Isaac Asimov that some of you that like science fiction stories might be aware of. That means you can program the computer in that regard to take care of humans. That's the first law of robotics. So in that regard, I think you will always have a large group of people that will be working very diligently and very cleverly to make sure that the scenario number 0 or whatever doesn't ever happen. And of course you can have the big bad guy. You can have 1,000 North Koreans and they can try to program a virus, but there is only so much the virus can do. It can be stop our banking system, it can stop a hospital for working for 1 day, but then there is so many more smart brains on the positive side, they can always fix that. So in that regard, and also looking at this other thing that you mentioned, like e-government, if you look at the Egypt Spring, that's basically where Sector 3 was taking over Sector 1. And you want to have people that are passionate, that do things because they really care and not because they are paid off. And I had the chance to talk with the Egyptian people, with this one guy who now he works at Quora, but he used to work for Facebook and for Google. The Egyptian who was at the center, and it was all the non-profits, the NGOs, and they were organizing that movement. And so in that regard, I think, again, you can really leverage the computer to do good. And now as far as e-commerce goes, I mean, we have Bitcoin, we have blockchain, we have all of those cool technologies. Now, what do I think about Bitcoin? And it's a bit away from AI, but it's still an interesting thing. Right now, it's basically just, it caters to the gambling habits of Chinese people because basically there is no substance to it underneath, and there's all those stories of the new coined millionaires through Bitcoin. The reason why they are millionaires because some gamblers buys a few Bitcoins, and because the volume actually, I think there is one coffee shop in Argentina where you can buy with Bitcoin a cup of coffee. Also, but still, I don't want to go to Singapore to buy a cup of coffee. I want to go out to Starbucks and I take my credit card, I take my Polish zloty coins. It's much more likely that for a very long time that will be the future of currency. There is new things, there is Ethereum. I spoke with some colleagues. They are millionaires right now because they are smart and they are gamblers. That means they bought the Ethereum coins when they were like $10,000. And they have exploded 100 times, so they are now millionaires. I'm very envious of them. But does it change, does it turn upside down the world trading system? I don't think for a very long time. We still want to have the underlying trust of society, and so I think it's those things that are the underpinnings, and it's extremely well, it's a good thing to be afraid of things. It's a good thing to worry about the future of AI. It will keep us on our toes, but personally I really trust in human creativity, intelligence, and that together we will be able to master that.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this word together. Yes, I think that this is key issue to try to find some solutions together, and also to understand what kind of relationship should be created when we are starting our analysis and remarks on the future. I think that at the end of our panel we will come back to some new challenges related to artificial intelligence. Now I want to ask Michał, you have the unique perspective as a manager in the big company on the one hand, and on the other as a person involved in building the startups ecosystem. I think that this is a spring of startups all over the world. Now, when we are talking about car connected, when we are talking about self-driving, there are many, many startups which are giving big companies some advices, some products, some services. And this is a very specific situation related to financial values of those startups. But what do you think, what kind of barriers we need to overcome, and what kind of possibilities and opportunities we need to create when we want to make the ecosystem for startups stronger and better?
It's a very complex question, but the truth is that I think that startups, it's kind of an answer for what already exists, and for actually technology has made with the labor market nowadays, right? So you don't need a factory to start building things now. You don't need to employ hundreds, thousands of people to prepare you a strategy, marketing campaigns and everything. Actually, technology has brought both time, but also resource-wise, everything to our doorstep, right? We can set up a company almost with an idea. We can look for partners through the net, and we can start doing this. By the way, the regular fundraising is gone, right? The top fundraising campaigns for startups right now are through Bitcoin, through Iridium, right? There is a story. Who of the audience is aware of the Golem startup? Have you heard? Yes. So the Golem is a Polish startup actually who, I'm saying who because I know them. They have developed, well, they have actually commercialized the idea of having this supercomputer or actually Uberize the computer capacity, right? So you can actually rent the data center for any project, and then it simply pays you for allowing your computer power to be used for that. But what I'm aiming at, they actually didn't go through the regular fundraising campaign. They went through the Iridium fundraising campaign. And as you said, there are quite a few, more or less, you know, like billionaires in this space, right? A few years ago, they had maybe $1,000. Right now, they are multi-millionaires. So it's easy to fundraise in that society, right? So they have fundraised within, well, 18 minutes, but honestly, the system broke down, so it was actually 2 minutes. 35 million zlotys for this idea, which is around 10 million euro. But at that time, they did the fundraising campaign in, what was it, November. The Iridium was 4 euro, no, 8 euro per Iridium, now is 40. So, taking into account they haven't sold all of this right now, this multiplied number 4. So the opportunities are, it was just an example, immense. I think that there are different megatrends which push young people to consider this as a path for career. And you're aware of that, right? On one hand, we say that, you know, that there is this Schumpeter theory of creative destruction, that every new job will overcome, so the labor market will create new jobs, and then the old ones will disappear, and then people will shift. But this theory has been created in 1942. What's the difference between now and then is not only the scale, but also the pace of the changes. We don't know if this theory will work in even close future. So this makes also the gap between the education system and the needs, and this also causes the 900,000 estimation of people lacking in ICT education in near future, right? 2020. That's what the reports say. So on one hand, we will have you know, potentially big skills gap because we'll have vacancies, but then we'll also have people who are unskilled to take a job. And this pushes people to really, you know, look for their own way. And startup ecosystem somehow booming, also because the pace of innovation and everything, large corporations are not very good at innovating, right? We are good in improving things that we already do. But if you look for really this... yes, we do processors for 50 years, and they're great processors, but, you know, we improving. It's a case for every big structure. So I think startups is the answer to all of this, right?
Thank you very much. It's important because when we are talking about Industry 4.0 with representatives of European industry and business, there are many questions. If we are ready to be innovative, how much it will cost? And there is the answer, yes. Try to start cooperation with startups. It's easier, it's cheaper, and it's much more creative, yes, and it's faster probably. So this is one of our messages. But the question, also additional question is, what do you think? How we can involve civic society organizations to startup ecosystems? Is it possible? What will be the role of NGOs in the startup ecosystem?
I think so. More, if I may very quickly jump to that, we see more and more startups actually solving social issues, this social entrepreneurship, right? People who are actually in their societies, they look for the problems in their societies, and then they try to solve it through technology, and then creating it as a company. In Krakow, one of the most popular are smogathons, right? So the hackathons connected to the air pollution, right? Which is exactly why they want to make something with it. It's one of the countries in Poland with the biggest air pollution. So I think that's a huge opportunity in Poland. I don't know how about your ecosystems but probably similarly for social entrepreneurship. And I think Sector 3.0 is the most qualified to identify the issues and then try to solve them.
Do you want to have some comments to? Yes, please.
Actually, yes, I was gonna just add, because a lot of NGOs now work with, they become the hubs for these startups, for the social entrepreneurs, and they can teach them. But the thing is that they have to also learn from somewhere, because entrepreneurial skills and having all these, high-level people, it's not that easy. So often big companies and people who already, like, let's say from Intel or in the Czech Republic from Microsoft, would then go and help out these NGOs and perhaps give talks or transfer skills to young entrepreneurs who then become the social entrepreneurs. So there is definitely a huge role for NGOs because it is not really a commercial activity.
Maybe I'd like to add, not only the startup, encouragement or support, but to enable this one, all this comes from the human. And how to, human ready for this kind of creative thinking or entrepreneurship is education. But probably current society or social system is so rigid in general. It's difficult to change a university curriculum or high school curriculum in national standard. And so it will take so long, and also social cost, it will be very high if you want to standardize that. Also, standardize the way of education is right way or not, for nurturing creative men or not is questionable. So probably NGOs, one of the main NGOs' rule is, having the citizens or young generation be ready by educating them in different format, like we do in these Sector 3.0, or some other ways of creating citizen education forum or things like that. So I think education, new way of educating people or make the people ready is very important as NGO's rule to prepare the Industry 4.0.
I just want to add that I came here, I represent TechForGood, which is an acceleration program that I founded with my business partner in Singapore. And we take exactly startups from the social tech scene, and we empower them and help them. And we work with a lot of large corporations, like we don't work with Intel, but Microsoft and Google and LinkedIn and these companies, they help our startups, each one in the different, what they represent, and we empower these startups and we help them, and in a much faster time and shorter time, you can make companies really, really good and really help society because you bring them all these people, all these great minds, and you just help them, and then you just boom and help the society. So the startup ecosystem is booming all over the world now, and just need to help them understand that they need to tackle social issues to make the world better.
Well, I think any type of change comes from NGO. The government, the establishment, just by the definition of its name, tries to conserve the establishment. And if you look at Feel the Burn, which is Bernie Sanders, who has brought a lot of change, that's in a sense an NGO. If you looked at the wave that got Barack Obama to power, that was also run like an NGO. It was a grassroots organization. And in fact, even the current American president, his message was, beat the establishment, I'm an outsider, and that's how I'm going to change. So, I mean, it was relatively obvious to look through it, but still that was the message that resonated. And so in that sense, any type of change comes through NGOs.
Yeah, I think that it's very interesting to observe some new phenomena, because if we can imagine much more traditional conservative situation, there were big business, big companies, and big governments. Now we are talking about open government and identity and participation and the role of third sector NGOs in creating new models and also cooperation between government and society. And on the other hand, we are talking about the new model of business in which small businesses or startups or some kind of stars from startups, stars in the nature, yeah? So they are visible, and after that we have new visible stars and startups. So this is completely new situation. The world is changing very fastly. When we are looking at the development of technologies, the technology is growing up very, very fastly. But our adaptability to new technologies from 10, 8 years are not growing so fast. How do you comment this? What we need to do to support technological development on the one side, but on the other hand, to make people much more adaptable to those new situations, because if it will be this gap between our adaptability and the technologies, there will be many, many social, individual, psychological, sociological problems. How to solve those problems, this is the last round of our debate. Iva, please.
Well, I was thinking again about what I was talking about earlier, about how there is a huge non-government sector, I mean, for example, among our membership that really tries to tackle that, because yes, you're right, people just can't adopt as fast, the establishment can't adopt as fast, people don't even know what the kids that are starting school today will be needing when they finish school, right? So that is extremely difficult, but basically this is an extremely difficult question, and what we can do is again cooperate and try to foster new ideas together, because the business knows and the NGOs know something else and the academia knows something else, and together hopefully we can figure out what will be needed and how we can adopt and not just try to catch up.
Well, I'd like to quote two things. Probably in 2016 again, the World Bank actually made a report on digital dividend. So the concept of dividend is actually value to be distributed to universal way, so that many people can be getting the benefit out of it. Still, our society is actually experiencing great divide in many ways. So this dividend thinking is very important. And in other sense, I'd like to say the inclusive innovation. So inclusive innovation, probably you and say this inclusive innovation is a sustainability, like a social system. So there are technological innovation, there are economic innovation, and there's social innovation. Probably what we have been missing so far is social innovation. So the technology has been changing very fastly, and actually the economic sector could actually cope with it, because there's very coincidence to matching for the evolution of the technology. But social system has not been changed that much. That's why probably further innovation cannot happen. So for a social structure we are expecting should be different in those ways. So I would say that probably we need to more think about what kind of problem we are facing, why we need Industry 4.0. Why do we need? I think the reason we raise this flag is because there are many unsolved problems we are facing. Aging society, environmental issues, and also social segregation, right? There are a lot of things that should be done ideal way, but we haven't solved. There are a lot of war going on, terror going on, right? So this is not the world that we expected for. Probably Industry 4.0 or Fourth Industrial Revolution or NGOs movement about this thing is actually probably correctly finding the way why we have done this. So maybe that awareness about the why will lead us to the certain solution, which is good for all. Good for all. Probably I think that would be my idea.
Awareness about why and what for.
Right.
Yeah. Kineret, please.
Like Eva said, we don't know what the future holds for us. We don't know what technologies, what will happen. So it's hard to foresee what we will need to learn. But as a society, I think we can together overcome these problems. I can tell when I got my first iPhone, which was about 7 years ago, I got this thing and I had no idea what to do with it. It was very challenging for me as a person. Like, it was something totally new. It was 7 years ago. And today, with my eyes closed, I can swipe, go, use everything. I can use a Mac. I'm very, I would say, tech person today. Going back 7 years, I wasn't. So as a person, as a society, we learn, we adapt. There are many, many tools out there, but we don't know what will be in the next 10, 20 years. But as humans, I'm sure we can overcome everything. And together, as a society, much better.
Thank you. Professor Gloor.
Thank you for giving me the trigger
iPhone.
together.
Yeah.
So I like to call that be a bee. Bees collaborate to collect honey. And don't be an ant, because ants, if one ant from one hive meets another ant, one of them will end up as food for the other hive. And what I teach in my classes is collaboration, not competition, and compete to collaborate, don't collaborate to compete. I think that's, for me, the one single decisive word, how to overcome all of those obstacles.
Thank you for joining collaboration and competition, I think, because very often we are forgetting about it. Michał?
I think this is a very important and interesting point about adaptation of new technologies. So, again, if I look back into startups, it's not, and even at Intel, it's not anymore about technology. It's about usage model. A few years ago, each new processor gave completely new experience, which actually we could feel, we could sense. Right now, our perception is somehow at the limit. I mean, how many K in the TV we can absorb? 4, 8, 16? We don't know, right? But if you look at the most successful startups worldwide, right? Have they really invented something? Did Facebook invent internet? Did Uber invent taxis? No. I mean, they just found new usage model to very existing, services. On top of that, they have completely changed the way we perceive and the way we value this. And believe yes, so like Airbnb does not own a single hotel room, and it's valued at tens of billions of dollars, right? It's just an app that connects people with, free rooms or free houses to people who would like to travel somewhere. So I think really it's not about the technology, because it's about the usage models that are adaptable, right? So I think that our perception might a little bit slow it down.
Thank you very much. It's not about technology, it's about usage model, but on the other hand, it's about us as humans in our everyday life. And I think this is the message, and this is the message of our today's debate organized by Polish-American Foundation, Freedom Foundation, and Foundation for Information Society Development, and many partners of this event, with the message, final message, shape your future. But just before you are starting to shape your future, try to understand future, and firstly, we need to try understand ourselves. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you very much to the audience, and thank you very much to organizers of Sector 3.0 2017. Thank you.